Adrian Cole ducked under the swing that would have taken his head off if he were any slower. The training mat beneath his feet offered no comfort as he rolled away from Bronthar's follow-up strike. Around them, other cadets practiced their combat techniques with varying degrees of success, but Adrian knew most of them were watching his struggle instead. "Too slow, human," Bronthar rumbled, his rock-like body barely moving as he advanced. The massive alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, his skin resembling cracked granite. "Perhaps you should request transfer to the engineering division." Adrian said nothing, conserving his breath. He had learned during his first week at the Unified Galactic Defense Academy that talking during combat only wasted energy he desperately needed. The station Haven 7 rotated slowly around its parent gas giant, providing just enough artificial gravity to make everything feel slightly wrong. Or maybe that was just Adrian's performance making him feel that way. Another cadet laughed from the sidelines. Silith, with her 4 arms and chitinous exoskeleton, rarely missed an opportunity to join in the mockery. "At least in engineering, dropping something won't get anyone killed," she clicked, her mandibles creating an approximation of human speech. The training hall stretched 50 meters in every direction, filled with combat rings, weapon racks, and holographic training systems. 200 cadets from across the galaxy trained here, learning to become officers in the Galactic Defense Force. Only 3 of them were human. Adrian often felt like those 3 were on trial, representing an entire species that had joined the coalition just 2 years ago. He feinted left, then dove right, trying to get inside Bronthar's reach. It almost worked. The bigger alien's reflexes proved faster than his bulk suggested, and one massive hand caught Adrian's shoulder. The impact sent him sprawling across the mat. "Enough," Instructor Calvesh's voice cut through the training hall like a blade. The Threnid stood at the edge of the combat ring, his crystalline body reflecting the overhead lights in rainbow patterns. His species had served in the Defense Force for 3 centuries, producing some of its finest warriors. "Cadet Cole, you fight like you expect strength to manifest from desperation. It will not." Adrian climbed to his feet, trying not to show how much his shoulder hurt. "Yes." "Instructor." "Cadet Bronthar, you fight like you expect all opponents to be weak. They will not." Calvesh's faceted eyes turned toward the larger alien. "Both of you represent failures in adaptation." Bronthar's expression shifted to something that might have been embarrassment, though reading emotion on a rock face remained challenging. Adrian simply stood at attention, waiting for whatever came next. Calvesh moved to the center of the training area, his movements fluid despite his crystalline appearance. "Tomorrow, we begin weapons qualification testing. This separates soldiers from civilians, warriors from those who merely wear the uniform." He paused, letting his words settle over the assembled cadets. "The Nexus 9 plasma rifle is the standard infantry weapon for all Defense Force personnel. It weighs 14 kilograms, delivers coherent plasma packets at 3,000 meters per second, and requires absolute control to fire accurately." Adrian had seen the Nexus 9 in training videos. The weapon looked brutal, built for species with strength that humans simply did not possess. "The qualification test measures accuracy, speed, and weapon control across multiple scenarios," Calvesh continued. "Failure means reassignment to support roles. Success means you may someday be trusted with the lives of those who serve beside you." His eyes found Adrian in the crowd. "Some of you may find the test beyond your physical capabilities. There is no shame in recognizing one's limitations." The words felt directed at him specifically. Adrian kept his expression neutral. "Dismissed, prepare yourselves." The cadets dispersed toward the locker areas. Adrian moved with them, trying to ignore the conversations happening around him. 14 kilos, someone muttered. "That's nothing." "I could fire it with one hand," Bronthar boasted to a cluster of admirers. "Perhaps I will, just to make the test interesting." Silith skittered past Adrian, her multiple limbs creating a clicking rhythm on the floor. "Good luck, human. You'll need it more than most." In the locker room, Adrian found the other 2 humans already there. Davis, a broad-shouldered man from the North American territories, was checking his equipment locker. Lynn, smaller but wiry, sat on a bench reviewing something on her data pad. "Heard the announcement," Davis said without looking up. 14 kilos is manageable if we use proper technique." "Manageable and impressive are different things," Lynn replied. "Everyone will be watching us again." Adrian knew she was right. Every test became a referendum on whether humans belonged here at all. They had qualified academically, passed the physical requirements, met every standard the Academy set. But standards meant minimum competence, and minimum competence meant questions about why Earth had been allowed into the coalition. "We'll adapt," Adrian said quietly. "We always do." That night, after the other cadets had gone to their quarters, Adrian returned to the simulator room. Lieutenant Reese was waiting there, as Adrian had expected. The older human had served in Earth's Special Forces before transferring to the Defense Force as an instructor. "Can't sleep either?" Reese asked. "Wanted to practice." "With the Nexus 9? Reese pulled up the weapon profile on the simulator. "It's a beast, designed for species with twice our strength." "Which means we need to be twice as smart about using it," Adrian replied. Reese smiled. "Now you're thinking like a human soldier. Show me what you've been working on." Adrian loaded the training simulation and picked up the practice rifle. It felt heavy in his hands, but weight could be managed. The question was whether he could manage it better than everyone expected. The simulation loaded with a soft hum, projecting holographic targets across the virtual range. Adrian raised the practice Nexus 9, feeling its weight settle into his shoulders. The weapon pulled at his arms, demanding strength he only partially possessed. "Standard two-handed grip first," Reese instructed. "Let's see your baseline." Adrian fired. The recoil surprised him even though he had expected it. The plasma bolt went wide, missing the target by half a meter. He adjusted, fired again. Closer, but still not accurate enough. "The weapon fights you because you're fighting it," Reese observed. "Every species here has enough raw strength to muscle through the recoil. You need a different approach." "What approach?" Reese walked to the equipment rack and pulled out a data pad, scrolling through files. "Before humans joined the coalition, we had 8,000 years of weapons development. We built tools that matched our capabilities, not tools that required us to be stronger than we were." He pulled up an image of an ancient projectile weapon. "This is a Colt 1911 pistol, designed in Earth year. 1911, fired one-handed, effective, reliable, used in combat for over a century." Adrian studied the image. The weapon looked primitive compared to the Nexus 9, but something about its design spoke to efficiency rather than power. "We're not stronger than Bronthar or Silith or any of them," Reese continued. "But human skeletal structure gives us advantages they don't have. Shoulder rotation, flexible spines, independent limb control. We evolved throwing spears and rocks, which required precision and body mechanics, not just muscle." "So you're saying I should fire one-handed?" "I'm saying you should explore options they won't consider because they don't need to." Reese set the data pad aside. "But first, you need to understand the weapon completely. Two-handed, standard grip. Master that before you innovate." They trained for 3 hours. Adrian's arms ached, his shoulders burned, but his accuracy improved. The Nexus 9 began to feel less like an enemy and more like a tool he didn't quite understand yet. When he finally returned to his quarters, his bunk felt like luxury. Sleep came quickly despite the nervousness trying to keep him awake. The next morning brought more standard training. Adrian attended tactical theory, where he consistently scored in the top 10%. His instructor, a reptilian Sarthak named Velos, had once commented that humans seemed to possess an unusual talent for strategic thinking. "Perhaps because you must think when you cannot simply overpower," Velos had said. It might have been an insult. Adrian chose to take it as a compliment. Hand-to-hand combat followed tactical theory. Adrian spent another session getting thrown around by larger, stronger opponents. He managed to score a few points using leverage and timing, but mostly he absorbed punishment, and tried to learn from it. Bronthar found him during the midday meal period. The massive alien carried a tray loaded with mineral supplements and processed proteins that smelled like sulfur. "Tomorrow's test," Bronthar said, settling his bulk onto a reinforced bench. "I have been practicing." Adrian focused on his own meal, some kind of synthesized protein the humans found barely tolerable. "Everyone has been practicing." "Yes, but I have been practicing one-handed technique," Bronthar's voice carried across the cafeteria. "To make the qualification more interesting, perhaps you should request the lighter training rifle. No shame in using equipment suited to your capabilities." Several nearby cadets turned to watch the conversation. Adrian kept his expression neutral. "I appreciate the suggestion," he said carefully. "It is not suggestion, it is advice." Bronthar leaned forward and the bench groaned under his weight. "You represent your species here. Failure reflects on all humans. Better to use appropriate equipment than to fail using standard issue." Silith appeared at the edge of their table, her 4 arms carrying multiple trays with practiced ease. "Bronthar speaks wisdom, rare as that is. The Nexus 9 is built for soldiers, not civilians." "We qualified for this academy the same as you did," Adrian replied, his voice still calm. "Minimum standards," Silith clicked, "which humans barely meet. Tomorrow will show whether barely meeting standards translates to actual capability." She moved away before Adrian could respond. Bronthar followed, leaving Adrian alone at the table. Davis appeared moments later, dropping his tray across from Adrian with more force than necessary. "Let them talk. We'll show them tomorrow." "Will we?" Adrian kept his voice low. 14 kilos, Davis. That's a third of Lynn's body weight. Half of mine. They're not wrong about the physical challenge. They're wrong about everything else." Davis attacked his meal with angry efficiency. "We didn't come here to meet minimum standards. We came here to prove Earth deserves a place in the coalition. Every test is a chance to do that." Adrian knew Davis was right, but knowing and believing were different things. That afternoon, he returned to the simulator. Reese met him there again, along with Lynn. "Figured you could use some company," Lynn said. "Also, I've been analyzing the Nexus 9 specifications. The recoil pattern is consistent, which means it's predictable. Predictable means we can compensate." They spent hours breaking down every aspect of the weapon. Lynn approached it like an engineering problem, Davis like a physical challenge, Adrian like a puzzle that required the right combination of both approaches. "The weapon pulls up and right," Lynn noted, watching Adrian's practice shots. "Your body compensates naturally after the first round, but you're overcompensating. Let the weapon move, then guide it back to target." Adrian tried it. His accuracy improved marginally. "Better," Reese observed, "but you're still fighting the recoil. Instead of working with it, try shifting your stance, lean into it." More adjustments, more practice. The simulator recorded everything, providing data they analyzed between shooting sequences. Slowly, patterns emerged. Adrian's scores climbed from barely passing to acceptable to occasionally impressive. "Now try something for me," Reese said as the evening cycle approached. "Fire one-handed, right hand only. Don't try to control the recoil, just experience it." Adrian shifted his grip, the weapon suddenly feeling enormous in one hand. He fired. The Nexus 9 nearly flew from his grasp, the recoil savage and uncontrolled. Again, Reese instructed. Adrian fired again and again. Each shot felt impossible, the weapon trying to escape his control. But after a dozen attempts, something clicked. His body began to understand the motion, the way the recoil traveled through his arm, his shoulder, his core. "That's enough for today," Reese finally said. "Rest, tomorrow just do your best." Adrian nodded, his arm trembling with fatigue. As he left the simulator, he passed a window overlooking the gas giant below. Somewhere down there, storms raged with enough force to shred continents. Up here on Haven 7, Adrian would face his own storm tomorrow. The question was whether he could weather it. The qualification range occupied an entire section of Haven 7, large enough to accommodate 200 cadets firing simultaneously. Adrian arrived early, watching the automated systems run their final checks. Holographic projectors lined the walls, capable of creating targets at any distance, any speed, any level of complexity. Other cadets filtered in gradually, most showing the confident swagger of those who expected to succeed. Bronthar arrived with his usual cluster of admirers, his massive frame making the standard-issue Nexus 9 look almost small. Silith scuttled along the ceiling briefly before dropping to the floor, her forearms allowing her to carry multiple equipment cases with ease. Davis and Lynn joined Adrian near the back of the assembly area. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say that practice had not already communicated. Instructor Calvesh entered precisely on schedule, his crystalline body catching the overhead lights. Two other instructors followed, a Sarthak and a species Adrian did not recognize, something vaguely aquatic that moved within a mobile water suit. Cadets, Calvesh's voice, carried across the range without amplification. Today you will demonstrate whether you possess the fundamental skills required of a defense force officer. Marksmanship is not optional. It is essential. Those who cannot control their weapons cannot be trusted with the lives of those they serve beside. He gestured toward the range, and holographic displays activated, showing the test parameters. Phase 1, static targets at 50, 100, and 200 meters, 10 shots per distance. Acceptable accuracy is 70%. Commendable accuracy is 90%. The display shifted. Phase 2, moving targets at variable distances. 20 targets, 30 seconds. Speed and accuracy both factor into your score. Another shift. Phase 3, combat scenario. Multiple hostile and friendly targets, environmental obstacles, time pressure. This phase evaluates your judgment as much as your marksmanship. Calvesh paused, his faceted eyes sweeping across the assembled cadets. Cadets will be called in groups of 10. Your scores will be posted publicly. There is no privacy in failure, nor should there be in success. His gaze found Adrian. We will accommodate physical limitations where appropriate. Training rifles are available for those who require them. The offer hung in the air. Adrian felt every eye in the range turn toward him and the other humans. All cadets will use standard equipment unless they specifically request alternatives, Calvesh continued. Choose wisely. Pride is expensive when it costs you qualification. The first group was called. Adrian watched 10 cadets approach the firing line, each taking a Nexus 9 from the weapon rack. They moved with confidence, handling the 14-kilogram rifles like toys. Begin Phase 1, Calvesh commanded. The range came alive with the distinctive whine of plasma discharge. Targets appeared at 50 meters, simple circles hovering in space. The cadets fired in sequence, their shots accurate and controlled. Scores appeared on the overhead display, 85%, 92%, 88%. All passing, most commendable. Phase 2 began. Moving targets streaked across the range at various angles and speeds. The cadets tracked them smoothly, their superior reflexes and strength making the rapid target acquisition look effortless. More high scores. Phase 3 introduced complexity. Holographic enemies appeared alongside. Holographic civilians. The cadets had to identify threats, avoid collateral damage, and maintain accuracy under pressure. A few scores dropped slightly, but everyone passed. Group after group cycled through. Bronthar's turn came in the 5th group. He approached the firing line with theatrical confidence, making a show of examining the Nexus 9 as if seeing it for the first time. Instructor, he called out, permission to attempt one-handed technique for Phase 1. Calvesh's expression was unreadable. The test parameters do not specify grip technique. You may proceed as you wish. Bronthar grinned, showing teeth like broken stones. He raised the Nexus 9 in his right hand alone, his massive strength making the weapon's weight irrelevant. The first shot struck center mass on the target. So did the second and the third. Show off, Lynn muttered beside Adrian. Bronthar completed Phase 1 with one hand, scoring 98%. He switched to two-handed grip for the moving targets, scoring 96%. Phase 3 saw him drop to 91%, but his overall score remained impressive. Silith followed in the next group, using her four arms to devastating effect. She could stabilize the weapon with two arms while the other two handled targeting and auxiliary equipment. Her scores matched Bronthar's. More groups passed, the overhead display filled with scores, most clustering in the acceptable to commendable range. A few cadets failed, their names highlighted in amber. They were escorted to a separate area, their test ending early. Group 18, Calvesh announced. Cadets Cole, Davis, Lynn, and 7 others. Adrian's stomach tightened. This was it. He approached the weapon rack with Davis and Lynn. The Nexus 9 felt exactly as heavy as he remembered, exactly as unwieldy. Around him, the other 7 cadets in his group handled their rifles with easy confidence. Standard equipment, Cadet Cole? Calvesh asked, his tone suggesting surprise. Yes, Instructor. Very well, Calvesh moved to the control station. Take your positions. Adrian stepped to his assigned lane. The firing line stretched to either side, other cadets settling into their stances. He raised the Nexus 9, feeling its weight settle into his shoulders and arms. Two-handed grip, just like practice. Let the weapon settle, find the balance point, breathe. Phase 1 begins in 3 seconds, Calvesh announced. 2, 1, begin. Targets appeared at 50 meters. Adrian fired. The recoil was manageable with both hands, the plasma bolt striking near the target's center, not perfect but acceptable. He fired again, adjusting for the slight drift. Better. The third shot hit center mass. Around him, other cadets fired with mechanical precision. Their shots clustered tight, their movements economical. Adrian focused on his own performance, blocking out the comparison. 10 shots at 50 meters. Adrian scored 75%, not impressive but passing. The targets shifted to 100 meters, smaller now, harder to hit. Adrian's first shot missed entirely. He adjusted, remembering Lynn's advice about overcompensation. The next shot struck the outer ring. Better. He found his rhythm, letting the weapon guide him as much as he guided it. 7 out of 10 at 100 meters, 70%, still passing barely. 200 meters felt impossible. The targets looked tiny at that distance. Adrian's first 3 shots missed. Panic tried to set in, but he forced it down. Breathe. Let the weapon settle, find the pattern. The 4th shot hit, so did the 5th and 6th. Adrian finished with 6 out of 10 at 200 meters, 60%, below the acceptable threshold. His overall Phase 1 score appeared on the display, 70% exactly, passing by the minimum margin. Beside his name, Davis showed 78%. Lynn had managed 82%. The other cadets in their group ranged from 85 to 94%. Phase 2, Calvesh announced. Moving targets begin. The holographic targets burst into motion, streaking across the range at angles that defied predictable patterns. Adrian tracked the first one, fired, missed. The target vanished before he could correct. A second target appeared from the left, moving fast. He swung the Nexus 9, compensating for lead time, fired, hit. The target dissolved in a shower of light. 30 seconds, 20 targets. Adrian's mind shifted into a different mode, the one that served him well in tactical simulations. Stop trying to predict. React. Let training take over. Another target, another shot. Missed 2 more targets appeared simultaneously at different ranges. Adrian chose the closer one, fired, hit, swung to the second, but it had already disappeared. Time cost points. The Nexus 9 felt heavy in his hands, his arms beginning to fatigue from the sustained firing position. Around him, other cadets moved with fluid efficiency, their superior strength making rapid target acquisition look effortless. Adrian could hear Silith's weapon singing, 4 perfectly timed shots in the space it took him to fire 2. 10 seconds remaining. Adrian had hit maybe 8 targets out of the 17 that had appeared, not good enough. 3 more targets materialized, moving in a crossing pattern. Adrian tracked the middle one, fired, missed. Adjusted to the right target, fired, hit. Time, Kelvish announced. The range fell silent. Adrian's score appeared, 9 out of 20, 45%, below acceptable. Beside him, Davis had managed 12. Lynn scored 13. The other cadets showed numbers ranging from 15 to 18. Phase 3 will commence in 2 minutes, Calvesh said. Cadet Cole, a word. Adrian set the Nexus 9 in its safe position and approached the instructor. Calvesh's crystalline face reflected Adrian's image back at him, distorted and fragmented. Your current cumulative score is 57%, Calvesh said quietly. Phase 3 requires a minimum score of 70% to bring your overall average to acceptable levels. That is unlikely given your performance thus far. I understand, Instructor. Do you? Calvesh leaned closer. This is not failure of effort. This is failure of capability. The weapon exceeds your physical parameters. There is no shame in this. Evolution designed you for a different environment with different challenges. Permission to continue with standard equipment, Instructor. Calvesh was silent for a moment. You understand that failure here does not end your career. Support roles are vital. Intelligence analysis, logistics, strategic planning, areas where humans have shown aptitude. I understand, Instructor, requesting permission to complete the qualification. Another pause, then Calvesh nodded. Return to your position. Adrian walked back to the firing line. His arms ached. His shoulders burned. The Nexus 9 felt heavier than before, as if the weapon itself knew he was failing. Davis caught his eye. You've got this. Lynn simply nodded, her expression determined. Adrian raised the weapon, two-handed grip, standard position, the safe approach, the approach that was failing. Phase 3, Calvesh announced. Combat scenario, identify threats, avoid civilian. Casualties, maintain fire discipline. You have 90 seconds, begin. The range transformed. Holographic walls appeared, creating corridors and rooms. Figures materialized, some armed, some not. Adrian moved forward, weapon raised, scanning for threats. A hostile appeared 30 meters ahead, raising a weapon. Adrian fired, hit. The target disappeared. He advanced, checking corners like Reese had taught him. 2 more hostiles, one partially concealed behind a civilian. Difficult shot. Adrian hesitated, trying to line up an angle that would not risk the innocent. Too slow. The hostiles fired first, and Adrian's scoring sensors registered impacts. Points deducted. He fired back, hitting one hostile but missing the second. The civilians scattered, and Adrian took the clear shot. Hit. He was moving too slowly. The scenario demanded speed and accuracy together, and Adrian could only manage one at a time. With the two-handed grip, repositioning the heavy weapon cost precious seconds. Every corner he turned, every target that appeared, the gap between him and acceptable performance widened. 45 seconds gone. Adrian's Phase 3 score hovered around 50%. Not enough, not close to enough. A cluster of targets appeared ahead, mixing hostiles and civilians in a crowd scene. The kind of scenario that required rapid target identification and precise shooting. Adrian raised the Nexus 9, trying to isolate the threats, but the weapon wavered in his tired arms. This was not working. The standard approach was failing. Time to adapt. Adrian shifted his grip, right hand only. The weapon's weight suddenly concentrated in one arm, but his left hand was free now. He used it to shield his eyes from the holographic muzzle flash, improving his sight picture. The Nexus 9 bucked in his single hand, but Adrian had practiced this, had felt the recoil pattern in the simulator. He fired, hit. The hostile dissolved. Another target partially concealed. Adrian rotated his entire body, using core strength instead of just arm muscles. The weapon moved faster in one hand than it had in two, the reduced control offset by increased mobility. Fired, hit. The civilian crowd scattered, revealing 3 more hostiles. Adrian engaged them in rapid succession, his free left hand helping him balance as he pivoted. The Nexus 9's recoil traveled through his arm, his shoulder, distributed across his body through his flexible spine. Each shot was controlled not by fighting the weapon but by working with it, letting physics and anatomy cooperate. His accuracy climbed, 60%, 65, 70. 30 seconds, Calvesh's voice announced, and Adrian detected something in the instructor's tone. Surprise, maybe. Adrian pushed forward, clearing the final room. 4 hostiles, 2 civilians, complex positioning. He dropped low, changing his angle, using his shorter stature as an advantage for the first time today. Fired from one knee, the one-handed stance stable because his entire body formed the platform instead of just his arms. Hit, hit, miss, hit. One civilian accidentally tagged in the crossfire. Points deducted, but not enough to fail. Time. Adrian stood, the Nexus 9 finally feeling manageable in his single hand. The range fell absolutely silent. Every cadet, every instructor stared at him or at the scoreboard overhead. Phase 3, 86%. Overall score, 71%. Passing, just barely, but passing. Calvesh approached slowly, his crystalline eyes fixed on Adrian. Explain your technique change. The weapon was too heavy for sustained two-handed firing given my strength limitations, Adrian said, keeping his voice professional. One-handed grip allowed me to use my core stability and skeletal rotation to manage recoil while maintaining mobility. You fired a Nexus 9 one-handed. Calvesh's tone made it clear this was not a question. Yes, Instructor. That should not be possible. It is for humans, Instructor. Our anatomy is optimized differently than most species here. Bronthar's voice carried across the range, loud and incredulous. He scored higher in Phase 3 than I did, one-handed. That cannot be legitimate. Calvesh turned to the control station. Review the footage, check weapon sensors for tampering. The wait felt eternal. Adrian stood at attention, his right arm trembling with fatigue, while the instructors reviewed every sensor reading, every camera angle, every data point the range had recorded. Finally, Calvesh returned. His expression was unreadable, but his voice carried something Adrian had not heard before. Respect, perhaps, or at least the beginning of it. All readings are normal, no tampering detected. Cadet Cole's performance is legitimate. He paused. Unconventional, but legitimate. The scoreboard confirmed it. Adrian's name glowed with a passing. Score not the highest, not even close to impressive compared to the aliens' performances, but passing. And in Phase 3, where it mattered most, he had done better than some who mocked him. Davis clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. Lynn actually smiled. Across the range, Bronthar stared at the scoreboard like it had personally offended him. Silith's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion or might have been respect. Adrian simply stood there, the Nexus 9 heavy in his hand, and let himself breathe. The debriefing room felt smaller than it should have, with 30 cadets crammed inside. Calvesh had called Adrian's entire test group for what he termed technique analysis, but everyone knew it was about the human who had fired a Nexus 9 one-handed and lived to tell about it. Adrian sat near the back, trying to avoid attention. It did not work. Play the footage again, Bronthar demanded from the front row. There must be an error in the recording. Calvesh complied without comment. The holographic display showed Adrian's Phase 3 performance from multiple angles. Every shot was visible, every movement tracked. The one-handed technique looked almost casual on replay, though Adrian remembered how much effort each shot had required. Sensor data confirms standard weapon configuration, Calvesh said as the footage played. No modifications, no reduction in recoil. Cadet Cole fired a regulation Nexus 9 at full specifications. With one hand, Silith clicked from her position on the ceiling. She had climbed up there during the review, apparently finding the floor too crowded. That suggests either our weapons are poorly designed or our understanding of human capability is incomplete. The second option, Lieutenant Reese spoke from the doorway, Adrian had not noticed him arrive. "May I, Instructor Calvesh?" Calvesh gestured toward the display. "Please, I am curious about the technique's origin." Reese moved to the front of the room, his movements economical and controlled. The older human carried himself with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. "Before Earth joined the Coalition, we spent millennia developing weapons that matched our capabilities," Reese began. "We are weaker than most species in this room. Our bones break more easily. Our muscles generate less force. These are facts, not insults." Several cadets shifted uncomfortably. Adrian appreciated Reese's directness. "So we built weapons we could actually use," Reese continued. "Projectile weapons that fired one-handed. Energy weapons designed for precision rather than power. Our entire military doctrine evolved around the principle that we could not win through strength, so we had to win through accuracy and tactics." He pulled up an image on the display, replacing the footage. A human soldier from Earth's past held a primitive weapon in one hand, the other hand free for balance or signaling or carrying equipment. "Human anatomy includes several advantages that most species here do not possess," Reese explained. "Our shoulders rotate through 180 degrees. Our spines flex in multiple directions. We have independent control of our limbs that allows for complex stabilization patterns. These traits evolved because we were persistence hunters who threw projectiles at prey." Another image appeared, showing skeletal structure comparisons between humans and several alien species. When Cadet Cole fires one-handed, he uses his entire body as a stabilization platform. The recoil travels through his arm, his shoulder, his flexible spine, and distributes across his core muscles. His free hand adjusts his balance and shields his vision. His rotating shoulder allows him to pivot faster than a two-handed grip permits. Bronthar rumbled something that might have been skepticism. "This technique would not work for my species." "Correct," Reese agreed. "Your skeletal structure is rigid for strength. Silith's forearms mean she benefits from multi-point weapon contact. The threaded crystalline structure makes flexibility disadvantageous. Each species has evolved for different environmental pressures. Humans evolved to be adaptable generalists rather than specialized for any single capability." Calvesh studied the skeletal comparisons with obvious interest. "You are suggesting that human weakness in raw strength is offset by biomechanical advantages in weapon handling." "I am stating it as fact, Instructor. Human soldiers have been firing weapons one-handed for 8,000 years. It is not a trick or a gimmick. It is fundamental to how we fight." The room absorbed this in silence. Adrian watched various cadets processing the information, their expressions ranging from curiosity to resistance. "Show us," Silith said from the ceiling. "If this technique is so fundamental, other humans should demonstrate it with equal proficiency." Reese smiled. "Cadet Davis, Cadet Lynn, would you mind?" Davis stood immediately. Lynn followed after a moment's hesitation. They moved to the front of the room where Reese had produced two practice Nexus 9 rifles from somewhere. "Standard Phase 2 simulation," Reese instructed. "Moving targets, use whatever technique you prefer." The simulation loaded. Davis and Lynn raised their weapons. Both started with two-handed grips, firing at the initial targets with decent accuracy. Then, as the targets increased in speed and complexity, both humans shifted. Davis went one-handed, using his left arm to steady his aim. Lynn modified the technique, firing with her right hand while her left worked a data pad, calculating firing solutions on the fly. Their scores climbed, not as high as Adrian's Phase 3 performance, but impressive nonetheless. When the simulation ended, Davis had scored 78%. Lynn achieved 81%. "We have been practicing," Davis admitted. "After seeing Adrian's simulator work, the technique requires adjustment period, but it is definitely viable." Bronthar stood, his massive frame making the room feel even smaller. "I want to try." Calvesh raised a crystalline hand. "Your physiology is not suited to this technique." "Then I want to understand why." Bronthar moved toward the front, surprising Adrian with his earnestness. If humans can do something we cannot, I need to know the limitations so I can plan around it in combat situations. That shifted something in the room's atmosphere. Bronthar was not challenging anymore. He was learning. Reese handed him a practice rifle. Try firing one-handed, see what happens. Bronthar raised the Nexus 9 in one massive hand. The weapon looked almost small in his grip. He fired. The shot went exactly where he aimed it, no visible difficulty. Your strength makes the recoil irrelevant, Reese observed. But watch what happens when you try to acquire a second target quickly. Another target appeared at a sharp angle from the first. Bronthar rotated his entire body, his rigid skeletal structure requiring him to move as a unit. He fired, hit, but the motion took nearly a full second. Now watch Cadet Cole. Adrian stood and accepted the practice rifle from Reese, hoping his exhausted arm would cooperate. The same target sequence appeared. Adrian fired one-handed, then rotated just his upper body using his flexible spine. The second shot came half a second after the first. Your strength is your advantage, Reese told Bronthar. Adrian's flexibility is his, both are valid, both have tactical applications. Bronthar set down the rifle carefully. I understand. He turned to Adrian, and his rocky face attempted something that might have been a smile. I apologize for my earlier statements about humans using training equipment. You have earned standard issue. The words cost Bronthar something. Adrian recognized that. Thank you, Adrian said simply. Silith descended from the ceiling in a controlled drop that showcased her species' natural grace. I want to understand human military history, she clicked. If we are to serve together, I should know how you fight. Others voiced agreement. The hostility that had dominated the Academy's atmosphere for weeks seemed to crack, letting something new through. Not friendship yet, but professional respect. A foundation. Calvesh remained at the front of the room, watching the exchanges with his unreadable crystalline expression. Finally, he spoke. Cadet Cole, you will assist in demonstrating adaptive marksmanship techniques to incoming classes. Cadets Davis and Lynn, you will participate as well. If humans have developed effective methods that our current training does not address, the Defense Force needs that knowledge integrated into doctrine. He paused, and Adrian could have sworn the instructor's faceted eyes held something like approval. Dismissed, except Cadet Cole, a moment. The room emptied slowly, cadets filing out in small groups discussing what they had witnessed. Bronthar left with Davis and Lynn, the three of them already deep in conversation about firing positions and target acquisition speeds. When everyone had gone, Calvesh approached Adrian. I owe you an apology, the instructor said quietly. I allowed my limited experience with humans to inform my expectations. That was unprofessional. Adrian had not expected this. You were working with the information you had, Instructor. Information I should have sought to expand rather than accept as complete. Calvesh was silent for a moment. I lost soldiers under human command 3 years ago during the frontier conflicts. I blamed human physical weakness for tactical failures. I did not consider that perhaps the failures were mine for not understanding how humans operate. I am sorry for your loss, Instructor. As am I for the loss and for the time I wasted on misdirected blame. Calvesh straightened. You have shown me that strength takes many forms. That is a lesson worth learning, regardless of how difficult the teaching. He left Adrian alone in the debriefing room, surrounded by holographic displays showing humans doing what they had always done best. Adapting, innovating, surviving against the odds. 3 months after the qualification test, Adrian found himself standing at the front of a training hall facing 40 new cadets. The incoming class represented 15 different species, and every single one of them looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Adaptive marksmanship, Adrian began, feeling strange in the instructor role, is built on a simple principle. Your weapon should enhance your natural capabilities, not fight against them. Today, we will explore how different species can modify standard techniques to match their physiology. Beside him, Davis held a Nexus 9 in a two-handed grip, while Lynn prepared holographic displays showing various alien anatomies. Across the room, Bronthar stood ready to demonstrate strength-based techniques. Silith waited on a support beam overhead, prepared to show multi-limb coordination. The past 3 months had transformed the Academy in ways Adrian still struggled to process. After his qualification performance, the Defense Force had sent a research team to study human biomechanics. Their findings led to modifications in training doctrine, new weapon variants designed to accommodate different species' advantages, and a wholesale revision of how the Academy approached physical diversity. Let's start with basic principles, Adrian continued. Species with greater strength can afford to muscle through recoil. Species with flexibility can distribute that recoil across their entire frame. Species with multiple limbs can achieve stabilization impossible for bipeds. None of these approaches is superior. Each is optimal for the species using it. A cadet from a species Adrian did not recognize raised a tentacle-like appendage. What if our anatomy doesn't match any standard category? Then we experiment until we find what works, Adrian replied. That is the point of adaptive technique. There is no single correct way to fire a weapon, only ways that match your body's capabilities. The training session progressed through various drills. Adrian worked with smaller species, showing them how one-handed techniques could improve mobility. Davis demonstrated how humans modified their stance for different weapon weights. Bronthar proved that strength could be applied efficiently rather than merely overwhelming force. Silith coordinated with four-armed species, developing techniques that maximized their natural advantages. Halfway through the session, Instructor Calvesh entered the hall. He observed silently for several minutes before approaching Adrian during a break. "The new cadets respond well to your instruction," Calvesh said. "You have a talent for translation between species perspectives." "I just remember what it felt like being the weak one," Adrian replied, "trying to find advantages where I could." "Weakness is contextual," Calvesh corrected gently. "You proved that rather definitively. The Defense Force agrees, which is why they have approved your application for advanced tactical training." Adrian had submitted the application on Reese's recommendation, not truly expecting acceptance. "When do I start?" "After graduation, 3 weeks." Calvesh paused. "You will be the first human in the sniper specialization program." The words carried weight. Snipers were elite, drawn from the top marksmen across the entire Defense Force. Adrian had qualified for weapons training by the minimum margin. The gap between minimum qualification and sniper school felt impossibly wide. "I know what you are thinking," Calvesh said. "You barely passed qualification. How can you be sniper material?" He gestured toward the training hall where cadets practiced various shooting techniques. "But sniper school is not about raw scores. It is about precision under pressure, adaptability in changing conditions, and the patience to wait for the perfect shot. Your qualification test demonstrated all three." "I got lucky in Phase 3. "You got innovative in Phase 3. There is a difference." Calvesh's crystalline face reflected the overhead lights. "Luck is random. Innovation is intentional adaptation. The Defense Force needs soldiers who can adapt when standard approaches fail. You have proven you possess that capability." Adrian watched Davis work with a group of cadets, helping them understand how to modify their breathing for better accuracy. Lynn explained firing solutions to a cluster of engineering-minded species who approached marksmanship as an applied mathematics problem. Bronthar demonstrated how to use strength for rapid position changes rather than just recoil management. "What changed?" Adrian asked. 3 months ago, you questioned whether humans belonged here at all." Calvesh was quiet for a moment. "I told you I lost soldiers under human command. What I did not mention was that the human commander saved twice as many through unconventional tactics I did not understand at the time. I blamed the losses and ignored the victories because accepting the victories meant accepting my own failure to learn from them." That must have been difficult to admit. It was necessary to admit, Calvesh corrected. The Defense Force cannot afford commanders who refuse to learn. You taught me that lesson by refusing to accept limitations others imposed on you. He turned to leave, then paused. Your qualification score was 71%. Do you know what it is now? Adrian had not retested. No, instructor. 94%. You have been practicing. Every day. Good, do not stop. Calvesh left the hall, his crystalline body refracting light as he moved. The training session continued until evening cycle. Adrian dismissed the cadets with assignments to practice the techniques most suited to their individual physiologies. As the hall emptied, Silith approached from above, descending on a line of webbing she had apparently attached to the ceiling earlier. The new cadets respect you, she observed. They listen when you speak. They listen because the techniques work, Adrian replied, not because of me specifically. They listen because you understand what it means to be disadvantaged and find solutions anyway. Silith's mandibles clicked in what Adrian had learned was her species' equivalent of a smile. I have been studying human military history as I said I would. Your species has a saying about necessity and invention. Necessity is the mother of invention. Yes, Earth was necessity incarnate for humans. Gravity that crushes, whether that kills, predators in every shadow. You survived by being clever when you could not be strong. That is a valuable perspective in a military that often defaults to strength as the primary solution. Adrian had never heard Silith speak so many words at once. Thank you. Do not thank me, I am merely observing facts, she climbed back toward the ceiling, her 4 arms moving with practiced coordination. But I am glad you are here, human. The Defense Force benefits from your presence. That evening, Adrian met Davis and Lynn in the observation lounge overlooking the gas giant. The massive planet dominated the viewport, storms larger than continents swirling across its surface. Heard about sniper school? Davis said without preamble. Congratulations. You both qualified for advanced training too, Adrian pointed out. Davis had been accepted into the Tactical Operations program. Lynn was joining the Weapons Development Division. Yeah, but sniper school is different, Lynn said. That's top-tier selection. They only take a handful of candidates each cycle. Reese thinks I can handle it. Reese is right, Davis agreed. You proved that on qualification day, the rest of us passed, you innovated. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the gas giant's storms rage. Somewhere below, lightning flashed bright enough to see from orbit. Up here, on Haven 7, humans had found their place among the stars by being exactly what they had always been: adaptable, innovative, persistent. 3 weeks later, graduation arrived. The ceremony filled the Academy's main assembly hall with cadets, instructors, and visiting dignitaries from across the coalition. Adrian stood with his class, wearing the formal uniform that marked successful completion of initial training. Calvesh presented the certifications personally, calling each cadet forward to receive their assignment orders. When Adrian's turn came, the instructor's crystalline hand held the data chip containing Adrian's orders longer than necessary. Cadet Cole, Calvesh said, his voice carrying across the hall. You entered this academy as a representative of a species many doubted belonged in military service. You leave it as a soldier who reminded us that strength takes many forms. The Defense Force is better for your presence. The applause that followed felt genuine rather than merely ceremonial. Adrian took his orders, saluted, and returned to formation. After the ceremony, as cadets dispersed to their various assignments, Adrian found himself approached by a group of new cadets, the ones he had helped train in adaptive marksmanship. Instructor Cole, one of them began, then corrected himself. Sorry, Officer Cole now. Just Adrian is fine. We wanted to thank you. Another cadet said, this one from a species with 6 legs and proportionally small arms. Your techniques helped me qualify when I thought my anatomy would prevent it. Others voiced similar sentiments. Adrian had spent 3 months teaching them, never quite realizing the impact those lessons carried. To him, adaptive techniques were simply necessary solutions. To them, they represented the difference between success and failure. "Remember what I told you on the first day," Adrian said. "Your weapon should enhance your natural capabilities, not fight against them. Find what works for your body, not what works for someone else's." They dispersed eventually, heading off to their own assignments and futures. Adrian collected his gear and prepared to depart for sniper school on a different station in a different system. Lieutenant Reese found him in the departure lounge, ready for the next challenge. "As ready as I was for qualification day," Adrian replied. "Which is to say, not entirely, but willing to try anyway." "That is all any of us can be," Reese said. "The Defense Force does not need soldiers who succeed effortlessly. It needs soldiers who adapt when conditions change. You have already proven you can do that." The transport arrived, and Adrian boarded with a dozen other candidates heading to advanced training. As Haven 7 fell away behind them, the gas giant storm still raging, Adrian thought about the journey that had brought him here. Earth to Haven 7, mockery to respect, minimum qualification to sniper selection. It had not been strength that carried him through. It had been the willingness to adapt when strength failed, to innovate when standard approaches fell short, to persist when quitting would have been easier. In a galaxy of giants, humans had proven they belonged not by becoming stronger, but by being smarter, more flexible, more persistently creative in finding solutions. That was enough. It would always be enough. The transport accelerated toward the jump point, carrying Adrian toward whatever challenges waited next. He was ready for them, not because he was strong, but because he had learned something more valuable: how to turn weakness into opportunity, disadvantage into innovation, and limitation into the very thing that made him exceptional.